Hello, and welcome back to the Personal Transformation Experience podcast with Maureen and David Brand. This week, we are talking about thriving on chaos, why we thrive on chaos, what has happened in our lives to cause us to potentially create or crave chaos, and how we have dealt with that and what we have found that has helped us to be a little less chaotic. I wouldn't say problem solved, but we're definitely working on it. For me, to define what thriving on chaos looks like, it's rushing around, need to control the outcome, making sure something is done right. In the work environment may cause one not to delegate effectively, may cause one, especially a higher leader at the level I'm in, to jump into the weeds, as it were, instead of focusing on the strategy level.
Right.
And
out, yeah.
having a high degree of urgency, almost to the emergency level about things when it's not an emergency, and dysregulating people and processes around me. It may be at home also. I know you have a lot to say on this because I'm the same person at home that I am at work. And the things that I'm working on I'm working on me to make me a better person in all aspects of my life.
These things traverse, your whole life. So, but I would say, you can't solve anything unless you're aware of it, right? You can't fix it unless you're aware of it. I don't know if this is fixable, but you need a sense of awareness to figure out how to change how you respond to certain things so you don't feel like you're fighting a fire all the time.
Today we're going to talk about a couple of different roles, and one is that I've known about myself for a very long time is called the fixer. And I've always felt it's my place to kind of fix the problem, fix the person, solve the problem, come to the rescue somebody. Many of the relationships I've been in reflected that, and also some of the people that I allowed to work for me for too long because they really weren't a good fit. I thought, hey, I can help this person. I can rescue them, right? So a lot of it came out of that. But when I go back to the why, as we talked about, right, childhoods were out of control, right? So my parents divorced early. All my caregivers were abusive, verbally, mentally, and physically. And so out of that arose this fixation and idolization of superheroes, who rose in to take care of everything. Right. So think of Superman maybe years ago. In fact, I developed my own character and became the title of my book I wrote about my life called The Everything Kid. I made my own superhero when I was 8 because I felt like I couldn't have any control. But as a superhero, well, I could do everything. I could fix everything. That's the name. And then later, I came to idolize movie characters like, think Neo, Keanu Reeves' character in The Matrix. Yeah. Right? He was the one, right, that could rescue them.
And you always wanted to be the one.
From The Matrix, right? Yeah. And then you had the other one I identify as Dr. Neville in I Am Legend, Will Smith's character, and he's up there in the helicopter, and he says, I can fix this. And so I always, in those moments where there's something, if one of my kids is in pain or there's a problem at work, that's the first thought that comes in my head is I can fix this. I can be the superhero. I can be the everything kid. And boy, I have to beat that down because how many times have we seen in a superhero movie, we just watched one the other day, where the superhero saves somebody or gets the criminal, put in jail or whatever, but in the process, they destroyed 100 cars or 5 buildings. And they're like a pariah. They get called into the mayor's office and they're scolded, and they're like, "But I fixed the problem. I put the bad guy away." Right. Yes, but there's 8 people in the hospital. There's 100 cars destroyed, and there's 5 buildings that are on fire. Right. So and it sounds kind of like the way I've operated. I'm like, yeah, but I did a good thing.
Yeah, you're like the bull in the china shop,
and nobody cares, right? How good you were, and some of these. Characters, and they're not superheroes, right? Usually can't take their powers away, right?
Right.
They're people like, was it Beverly Hills Cop, right? he got taken off the force, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And, how many times do you see a cop movie say, "Give me your badge"? Right.
Right.
And then they go rogue and they try and they always get the criminal in the end, right?
Right.
But they still
do their own investigation.
They do tons of damage, you destroy everything, right? Everything's a wreck. Whole neighborhoods are destroyed, right? It makes me think about, right, if you had a mouse runner in the house and were chasing it with a broom and you knocked the lamps over,
right?
You broke your dishes,
mouse. Yeah.
But you got the mouse.
Did you though? Because you opened the door and you ran out.
So, and I'm done with analogies, by the way. So if you haven't gotten the visual now, hopefully you have by now, right? Because that's kind of like how I think I have operated historically. And that when you act independently, right, it can cause people to resent you or avoid you.
Yeah.
Right? And we've seen this with these characters.
I often say, you're like the Tasmanian devil.
My mom called me that, actually.
Running around.
Well, she called me that, and she called me El Destructo. But go ahead, right?
Yeah.
Because they called you Crash also.
They did, but only because I was always injuring myself because I was always like super athletic and running, and how many times I had to get my knee drained playing soccer. I mean,
True.
and I would always be running somewhere, like running somewhere. So I run up the stairs and fall up the stairs. I don't fall down.
I've seen you do that, but I didn't want to. What were you going to say? I didn't want to distract you.
I mean, I was just saying, like, sometimes it feels like you're like the Tasmanian devil. You're running through the house, cleaning things, and then you break a glass, or you'll put a hole in the wall, or
Well, that's creating chaos.
Creating chaos, yeah. So I think, but as trying to fix everything, I realized when you were talking, it's not so much I'm a manager, because we put me as like a manager of managing other people's feelings. I'm a protector first. And I think my part that jumps up and does the Kimbo, pose like Wonder Woman or somebody, I stand in front of anybody I want to protect, including myself. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if it's for something inconsequential. If I'm triggered into a protector part, I'm digging my heels in and I'm not letting go, and I am fighting to the end.
For sure.
And, like I did that. I mean, I was hypervigilant with my own child, and the fact that she has disabilities also made it magnified. Yeah. But there's a huge protector part in me. So what I do is I take on everybody's emotions, because I feel like I have to protect them against suffering and their own emotions. So I will take their emotions away from them, take their suffering away from them.
Wait,
or try, like that's in my head.
You think you are?
I think I am. I'm actually not.
Right.
But the protector role is to jump up, stand up in front of them and take all their emotions and suffering away. That's my goal. Like,
so that's your superhero.
Yeah, I don't want them to suffer.
So you would have been the protector, would have been your superhero
but I never thought of
costume.
it as a superhero thing. I always thought of it more as a sort of a quiet kind of, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to suffer for them.
It sounds like a superhero. It sounds like maybe somebody from the X-Men, right? I'm going to go up and absorb people's feelings.
I'm going to suffer for you.
That's
Let me be suffering for, like a martyr.
That sounds like you could make a whole movie out of it too.
So I will suffer for you. Give me your emotions. Let me suffer for you. Right. I mean, and I literally would take on other people's emotions and end up suffering for myself while they suffered. Right. The whole, you can't cry in my presence alone.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, if somebody gets emotional, I get emotional too. I can't stop it. And I realize that I'm super sensitive and more porous to the world because of that, because of the way I grew up, and I'm just hypersensitive. I've always been. I don't know if that's a bad thing, but I do need to allow people to have permission to feel what they feel. Not that I don't give them permission to feel, but I want to take it away. I don't want somebody I care about to suffer. And so I need to have, what did you call it? Compassionate detachment. Compassionate detachment is something that I need to practice, because it's not, first of all, it's not something, I shouldn't be taking anybody's emotions, and I shouldn't on myself, but it's not a good thing to take somebody's emotions. For one, it's not healthy for me. And number two, those are their emotions. That's their suffering. That's their birthright. It's not okay for me to try to take someone else's suffering away. That's how they're going to learn.
We're both trying to do things.
They're going to have experiences in life that are going to cause suffering, and they're going to come through that suffering onto the other side and realize, okay, I learned a lot from that, right? And so I think back to all the suffering that I did in my life and how much I've learned from it. It's not fair for me to take that away from anybody, even my own child. It's her journey, her life, her path. She has to walk it. I can be there to guide her and help her and support her, but I am not allowed to take her suffering away, which I can't. But, it's not something that now in retrospect, thinking about it, it's not something that anybody should do, because that's somebody else's suffering. You can't take it away. You can only be there for them. You can
supportive role.
Supporting them, yeah.
Supportive role.
But like I would absorb, and I have to say to myself, those are not my feelings. They're theirs. They're not my feelings. And I have to chant this in my head. These are not my emotions. They're their emotions.
And it makes me think as you're saying this because, feelings don't pass from one person to the other, right?
No, they don't.
So you're not taking something out of somebody's...
No, I can't take anybody's emotions. I can only feel it.
What then happens is you've got somebody that's in a distressed emotional state, and then you're going to be in the distressed emotional state. I feel like then you're less likely to support them in that case, effectively.
I can't help somebody when I'm in
and
emotional
as much as I'm running around trying to do 10,000 things, thinking I'm helping somebody.
Now we're both dysregulated, right? I mean, if my child or somebody I care about gets dysregulated emotionally and is crying and have a meltdown, I can't lose my shit.
No, you're supposed to be
I have to be strong in the rock, right?
And I remember getting told that when your niece died 15 years ago, and I was upset. Well, people were coaching me like, you can't be this upset. Maureen needs you to be her rock.
No, that's not. But see, I don't believe that either. You have permission to feel. You're allowed to feel what you need to feel. I mean, this was a grave... I
wasn't trying to take your feelings.
No.
I was simply feeling what I was feeling.
Appropriately so.
Right.
There was a small child
So we're not talking about suppressing feeling.
Right. There was a small child that was in grave danger and in a grave situation medically, and nobody was feeling good. I mean, it was an appropriate emotional response.
Yeah, it's interesting, though. A few members of your family came up to me and said, I don't understand why you're having this reaction. Well, that's what I got,
right? I got, she's
This isn't your kid. Why are you this upset?
Yeah, exactly. They don't, so you didn't have permission to feel. You weren't allowed to feel what you wanted to feel. That's how I grew up, but that's the family I grew up with.
Remember they came in and got you and said, your boyfriend's out here crying.
Yeah, I was downstairs.
Like it was a problem.
I was downstairs on the phone with a pediatrician, my daughter's pediatrician at the time, talking about what was going on, and he was kind enough to call me.
Yeah. Well, we digress a little bit, but there was no need for someone to come up and look for you to manage my feelings in that moment.
Right, and that's the thing. I can't, I can't manage someone else's feelings. Now, as I've grown and, my daughter's older and everything, I mean, even when she was having a hard time, I held it together, and then I lost it later.
Yeah, you're both having a hard time at the same time.
Yeah, but I do, my first attempt, my first thought is I want to take those emotions. Like I will absorb someone else's emotions and I'll hold it together while I'm holding their emotions and then lose it later. But I think, some of that is kind of normal. Like I think we all get upset when we see our children suffering in some way. It affects me. I don't know any parents, but I can only speak for myself that I don't like to see my child suffer. Nobody would, I would imagine. But I will hold it together for her until, and then later I might lose it without anybody around. But I still want to take away her suffering, and it's not something that I think anybody...
Yeah, I think the better thing as a parent or partner is to help people, support people in their efforts to process their suffering.
Process the emotions, get them to talk about it. That's the most important thing.
That's effective, not...
Don't let them be alone with the emotion because they may not know how to process it.
Or dismiss them.
Right.
And say, you'll feel better tomorrow. Or let's go get ice cream.
Like the three things.
Let's go to the mall, right? Those are not effective strategies.
No, that's not. Let's, I believe you. Tell me more. And what was the third statement? I
don't know, but I think we should delve into a little bit with the time we have to how we got here. So I think the reflection for me, because you asked me this earlier, and it's not something I thought about till recently, is I was often ignored or neglected or purposely not heard or seen as a child. My mother had a habit of not talking to people, including myself, for days when she was angry. My stepmother did the same thing. And so I had this pattern of maternal caregivers in my life purposely not speaking to me for several days to punish me that way. So I was ignored, and my father, looked the other way when he was around. So I then somewhat subconsciously, I think, developed this need to, one is to fix things because I couldn't fix things when I was younger. But this other piece too is, you're going to see me. I'm going to fix this. I'm going to be the star. I'm going to be the superhero. I'm going to be the one. And you are going to have to pay attention to me.
Yeah.
And it's not always positive attention, right? But it's attention.
It's negative attention, but it's attention nonetheless.
So what about you? How did you get to become the protector?
Well, I grew up, with 3 siblings and, an abusive alcoholic father and a mom who really did the best she could, but had a hard time dealing with it. So, tended to look the other way a lot of times.
Generational trauma.
Yeah, generational trauma. I didn't know what to do. And I couldn't ask for a better parent, but at the time, she did the best she could do in the moment. We were all victim or suffering.
Yeah.
So, but it was chaos. My dad, created a lot of chaos, and there was a lot of physical abuse. And I felt like I needed to protect my younger siblings.
Yes.
And that's how I became the protector, because I didn't want them to suffer. I didn't want them to get beat. They were so small.
But you couldn't protect them.
No, because I wasn't much older. Maybe I was 9 and they were 5, and
so you couldn't protect them.
3.
So you took on a protector role in the remainder of your life.
Yes.
I couldn't fix my mother or the situations that.
I couldn't protect them. I tried to protect them. I couldn't protect them, and that made me fall into that, I have to take on their suffering.
We have to close the loop, right? So I think that, this whole idea, you're trying to protect people from their own feelings, right, is what I'm hearing.
From suffering, yeah.
Right, well, that's their own feelings,
yeah.
right? You're trying to protect people from their own feelings. I'm trying to fix people so they don't end up having those feelings, right? But it's still all about managing emotion, right, in a way.
Yeah.
It's just 2 different approaches. And they arose from similar concepts, right? You had, my case, I had a mother who was very tragic. She had bipolar depression, spent months in bed. She tried to commit suicide twice. You didn't have that, but you had a very abusive father, more than even so than mine. And you had to watch your siblings get beat, and you couldn't protect them. So we both kind of are, this is why, and there's all this talk about a trauma bond. The good thing is that, yes, I think some of the shared experience brought us together, but it wasn't the only reason that we're together. People do get together because they're like, oh, well, you had an abusive childhood like I did. Let's get married, right? That's dangerous.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we've pushed each other hard. We've pushed against each other hard over the years to become better versions of ourselves and to have the awareness of how we are behaving.
Right, but I think that's what we both gain from each other. That's where the attraction was for me, and it seems like that was probably where the attraction was for you. Is both our drive and desire to always learn more, be better, find another way, evolve as human beings and people in all aspects of our life, from work to parents and everything. We always want to, how can we be better? How could I do this better? How could I wake up and be the best version of myself tomorrow? Right? How can I be better today? And I think that was really kind of what keeps us moving forward in our lives. And I had a thought I was just going to say before, but right. So when I met you, you appeared to be such a stable man to me. And that was so the antithesis of what I had experienced in the men in my life. Right. As much as my dad did what he did when I was younger, I grew up and I got older and I realized what happened to him and the why behind his behavior and the fact that he was trying to do the best he could. And Did he fail miserably? Kind of. But later in life, I learned to love him and pulled the best of him and saw the best in him. And that's, I think, all we can do. You can look at somebody and look for the best version of them, or look at them through the best, to find the best version of them.
Right.
Right. Through that lens. And when you do that, you do see the good come through. And my dad had a huge heart and loved his children fiercely. He just didn't know how to show it. And he had, things that he did that...
He had a lot of inner turmoil.
A lot of issues. And, so then I had to see from the result of our childhood how my siblings grew and how they manifested their trauma in their lives. And, it was difficult to do. And I still see it today, so I struggled with the unstable men in my life. And when you came along, you seemed pretty stable. And so there are times when you do things that don't feel stable to me, and I respond in not a good way. So my protector part, that child comes out, the inner child, the protector part comes out and attacks.
Yeah. But watch holding me to a standard that may be more than I am, right?
Well, I don't know if I'm holding you to a standard. I don't see you through the eyes of the person that I am now. When I do, my higher self comes in, I'm not, right? But that child in me is seeing a man that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Right. And, or turning something into an event that happened many years ago. Now I'm triggered by it. So it's not just that you did this one thing. It's this event that triggered me into believing something happened.
Well, I hope we can talk more about that next week.
Yeah.
But I think we should pivot to what is effective at helping us pivot and kind of change that thing, change ourselves, right? Because we can only change from within. I think for me, it's different things, right? I've learned the power of the pause. Sometimes I just have to take a mental time out. When I realize that I'm getting, when anxiety or over concern or too much energy is arising within me, it's time I need to step away and maybe exit a conversation or exit the room even from talking to you, right? In a way that I can go for a walk, right? I can do that at work. I can go for a walk, step back and reflect, right? Is this the right time to respond?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, look, you want to think in terms of, you want to step back, you want to take a break, but that's only if you're aware something's going on.
Well, this is the practice, right? It's the awareness, right? That's why we meditate. The mindfulness is all about awareness, right? Because if you have no awareness and you're just consciously responding to everything in a triggered way and then firing back, ready, aim, fire. We talked about that a few months ago. So you have to be aware. 100%.
You have to be aware. But there's times we're not. Like, I wasn't aware yesterday.
Right.
I mean, that took me by such force that I wasn't even, and typically I can tell you, you know what? There's a part of me that's feeling this right now. It's a part, and it's responding to what you're saying. Yesterday, I couldn't tell you that because my brain completely clicked off from a rational state into an emotional state, and I had no ability to reason at all for hours. And that's a little scary. Like, but I have to remember, like, I'm human, I'm going to be human, and I'm going to make mistakes. And, I hope I don't do that again. And that's something that I haven't done. I don't ever remember doing that, actually. I mean, maybe I did, I just don't remember. But I don't remember doing that like I did yesterday. Like, I just completely switched off. A switch went off. And the part came in and took over. And that part that took over was so protective that it wouldn't let anybody else, not even my higher self, kick in until something happened. You said something and the dam broke, and but like it was feeding off the chaos. It was feeding off.
I changed my response. I said, I'm not going to allow you to speak to me this way.
Yeah. And then I'm like, who's talking? Literally, I was like, who's talking right now? Like, I was scrambled, which I think probably was what worked.
Oh, sometimes you have to scramble the signal.
Yeah.
But hey, I thought you didn't want to talk about this week because
I didn't.
You're going pretty deep on it.
Well,
I guess it's a teaser for next week.
Yeah.
I still wanted to just talk about a few additional things that are helping me to move out of this fixer role. Is don't focus on minutia. Let little things go, and that's hard. And let other people fail at things. Like I might sense at work, well, if you do that, this is going to happen. But I don't need to say that. And actually, somebody that I worked with for a while at the company would say, let the person touch the hot stove.
Yes.
Right.
Even if they do it 10,000 times.
Even to some extent, when I think about you protecting people from emotion, let them feel that emotion.
Yes.
So for both of us, it's thank you, Mel Robbins, is a little bit of let them feel their emotions, no matter how hard it is to do so. Mm-hmm. Let them do something and fail at it, no matter how hard it is to watch them fail. Because in doing so, you teach them to learn from their mistakes and you teach them to process their emotions.
Right.
By protecting them or fixing them, you allow neither of those things to happen.
Right, and they don't learn. And now they're solely dependent on you. They need to make mistakes, feel their emotions.
That's how to create people that are not independent.
Yeah.
Is protecting them from feeling certain things and protecting them from failing.
Right. If you want them to feel confident about their ability to manage their own emotions and make mistakes and get up and fix it and succeed, nobody succeeds without failing first. Nobody.
Yeah. So it's so simple now, and I see it so clearly. Mm-hmm. My role has been to protect people from failing. Your role is to protect people from feeling.
Yes. That's it.
Feeling and failing.
Right.
No feeling, no failing.
Right. No feeling. Nobody can do that.
Unless you do it right.
And it can create a sense of chaos because now you have everybody depending on you, and you're running around. You have to do it all, and that's a big burden.
But you can have people emotionally dependent on you if you're protecting them from their feelings.
Yes.
Now you're managing their emotions for them.
Or
they just
trying.
So now you're you're allowing somebody to outsource their emotional processing to you.
Yes.
Much as I would be allowing someone to outsource their creative thinking or critical thinking to me. Right. Now we've created handicaps in people. Very interesting because I didn't think about this clearly until just now.
Yeah, yeah.
The other thing I love, and we were talking about this with our meditation group this week, this whole idea that I'm on a merry-go-round. I've heard people say, I wish I could get off. You can.
Right.
You can step off the merry-go-round. The merry-go-round can keep going, and you can observe the merry-go-round.
Yeah.
So whatever it is in your life, you can step away from it, whether it's somebody with painful emotions or failing and making mistakes at work, is you can go from being in the, I have to be right here in the mix and helping. No, you can just step back and observe.
Yes.
And then maybe that person comes to you and say, hey, I need help working on this. I need help working on myself.
And I've done that with Finn a lot lately, too. I noticed myself just watching him and being kind of in awe of how his brain works and how he does things and how he organizes his life right now. And I'm like, this is so cool. You know, like watching him evolve and grow and mature and figure stuff out. And I'm just listening and watching and, you know, he'll ask me, I'm like, what do you think? You know, like, so I'm really mindful of that because I really want him, like, this is it.
Right, because you don't want to say, here's what I think you should do.
Right, no, never. Yeah. This is a bad idea.
Right, and, just like I wouldn't do that as a leader.
And you don't want to say, you know, well, since you can't do this or since you can't do that, like, that's not, none of that's true. They absolutely can. Mm-hmm. She absolutely can. So I think, you know, what makes us create chaos is familiarity, comfort in what we know, fear of the unknown. Mm-hmm. So I think understanding what you fear about the unknown, you know, is important. And
there is unknown. There's risk-taking.
There's always going to be.
Making mistakes is part of risk-taking. Feeling emotions and having to process them is risky.
Yeah, and I think for me, I know writing stuff down, like getting it out, it's like cathartic. Mm-hmm. You know, journaling or whatever you want to do.
You taught your child to journal. That's wonderful.
Yeah, I taught my child. Journaling is like one of the most powerful things you can do. I know not everybody can get into it, but it is very powerful if you give it a try. Even draw. Like, you don't have to write. Mm-hmm. You can draw pictures of your emotions. Yeah. Like Finn will draw pictures that depict how he feels.
Yeah.
And what kind of experience he's having that are so clearly communicating what happened.
Right. Your communication doesn't have to be verbal.
Yeah.
You know, I just want to make sure that whoever's watching understands we talked a little bit about compassionate detachment, but for you as a protector, I think that's more important.
Yeah.
And we talk about moving to a supportive place rather than getting in there and sharing in the emotion that they're having. And I love this quote with what compassionate detachment means. We don't take on someone else's negativity or give unsolicited advice like, well, you should try this, or trying to fix the situation. By doing this, we can provide loving support, yet remain calm, non-reactive, and non-judgmental.
Yeah. Not take on the emotion.
And be non-judgmental, right? Say, well, this is your fault, right?
And it's interesting.
You made your bed, you need to lay in it, right?
So I experience this a lot when I work with families because I am detached.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not emotionally, I connect with them about the joys and sorrows of raising a child on the autism spectrum or with a developmental delay. I mean, I can connect and empathize because I've been there. So I will feel some emotion. But at the same time, it's not my child. Those are not my emotions.
Right. That's easier than it being your own child.
Their emotions
for sure.
are their emotions, and my emotions are my emotions. So I can kind of separate those out. But when I'm with like you or Finn or somebody I care about, even a family member, I still struggle with not, especially my brother. I have a hard time separating my emotions from his emotions. And
well, at least you're aware of it and working on it.
Yeah.
But, I think from a wrap-up standpoint here, again, you have to believe that you're in control of your life, right?
Yeah.
And everyone is in control of their life if they're an adult, right? People have autonomy. So we can't, even our children, we can't fix them, and we can't take on their emotions.
Yeah.
I like some of the things you put down from the notes. Imagine a life that has an abundance of joy, bliss, calm, peace, love, safety, success, and good excitement. So it's not just imagining, right? But what does it feel like?
Believing is true, yeah.
But if you can feel like what your future looks like, you can feel joy and you can feel happiness, right? And you can feel what success feels like. You're more likely, when you can make an emotional connection to where you want to go, you're more likely to get there, right?
Absolutely. I mean, our emotions, our thoughts create our emotions, and our emotions create our life, create our reality.
Yeah.
And I believe that 100% because, where you are emotionally is where your life's going to be.
Right.
Right. So if you're living in a place where you feel lack and scared and, like there's not enough and then you will experience lack and scarcity.
Yeah.
But if you live in it if your mindset or emotions are, you're living an abundant, wonderful life, you may not have all the material things you want, but if you have your health and you have people who love you, and you know that love is abundant and it's never going to end, then you're going to be your experience.
And it is a wonderful life.
Okay, Stuart. So if you created it, you can change it.
That's what I like. Yeah, you had made that point, right? If you can create chaos, you can create calm.
That's right.
You have this ability to create the good. Use your force for good.
That's right. I had a good friend who said that. My friend Roger, all the time.
Yeah, right? This force that you have, right, to want to take on people's emotion, but use it to support them and help people process their emotions. Think how amazing that is, right? So this is, again, we call this podcast Personal Transformation Podcast for a reason.
Yeah.
Because this is about trying to move ourselves from a less desirable state to a state in our lives that's going to be more fulfilling to others, and creating better connections with ourselves and each other and other people. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not, we do the best we can in the moment. Nothing's perfect. And this is life, right? Life has its up and downs.
Absolutely.
So it's like a roller coaster or a merry-go-round. You can jump off. If it starts getting boring or making you nauseous, jump off and just watch it go.
Like John Lennon said, you can just watch the wheels go round and round.
Round and round, that's right. You can just observe it for a little while and then jump back on if you want.
Sometimes you just need, also, like he said in the song, to let it go.
Yeah. You have to let some stuff go.
Yes.
If it doesn't serve you, let it go.
If we haven't made anything clear in this podcast today, it's sometimes
We're full of cliches
sometimes
today.
you just need to let things go.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You just need to let it go. Not everything deserves a response. Not everything deserves your intervention.
Yep.
Or protection.
Right.
So, yeah.
You could watch somebody go through something and see them come out on the other side of it all by themselves. But that's their journey.
And they'll learn.
How
right? to
let them
work through. Let them.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you, Mel. All right. That's it for me, unless you have anything else you wanted to add.
No, that was it.
Okay. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please hit the like button and subscribe, and visit our Instagram page at Personal Transformation EXP, where you can leave additional comments or direct message us. So thank you again and have a great week.
We'd love to hear from you.
Thank you.